All right, welcome everyone to our Career Edge webinar series created by your Business School Alumni Network. Thank you all for joining us today. We've got a really great session planned for you. Before we start with introductions, I want to let you all know that we'll be taking questions. So please utilize the Q&A function on your screen to submit any questions that you might have throughout the course of the presentation, and we will get to as many of those as possible during our Q&A at the end of our discussion. Additionally, we are going to be sending everyone that attends today a link of a recording of the presentation and any of the resources that we refer to. All right, so let's get started. So I am Charlotte Bockstahler. I am also an alum of University of Colorado, Denver, and I got my MBA and my master's in marketing here from UCD. And I've spent my entire career in marketing and competitive intelligence consulting in the entertainment industry. So I'm now also teaching marketing at UCD and serving on the marketing program and sports and entertainment advisory councils as well. So I will be moderating the session today with our presenter, Sue Wyman. Sue Wyman has 15 years of experience in national executive search and over 10 years of experience in career and job search coaching. Prior to launching her career search practice, she worked in sales leadership roles in startup and Fortune 50 organizations and led teams of up to 75. Sue has an executive MBA from the University of Denver and a Bachelor of Science in Technical Management from Regis University. And today we're going to talk about quitting your job. Definitely not something to take lightly. Sue's going to talk with us about the key considerations to ask yourself if you're thinking about quitting. So welcome, Sue, and thanks for being here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to join you, and I hope I can add some sort of clarity to the process of quitting or even thinking about it. Who hasn't wanted to do this at one time or another? You know, way better than a letter of resignation, short and sweet, but you really can't do that. So I think the most important thing is to try and remove the emotion from quitting or thinking about quitting and making it into a process, because a process is repeatable and it really makes it a little bit more about facts and data. So process step one is really getting your thoughts down on paper. Taking a step back, breathing a little bit, and avoiding some of the common pitfalls of making a hasty decision. You know, some of the pitfalls that I see are having no job and no plan, burning bridges where you worked. No matter if you're in New York or if you're in Denver, it's still a small world and you don't want to burn bridges. Hurting your financial picture by an abrupt quitting, and increasing rather than decreasing your stress level. Here is a kind of a pro and con chart that I came up with for this, but I really didn't come up with pros and cons. Benjamin Franklin came up with a simple decision-making format in 1772. He called it a worksheet for the moral mathematics of decision-making. Clearly his words and not mine. It's the first known instance of a pros and cons framework. I've used this framework for over 30 years. I've encouraged my kids to use it. It's simple and it's very effective. Here's an example. You know, I won't read it to you. It's pretty much all there. But if you dread going to work every day and you're in a toxic work environment, if your company's having major financial or ethical issues, you know, if stress is really impacting your health or your family life, or if you're now on the outside looking in, you're not in the know, you're not included, I think just like laying it out on a piece of paper can really help.
Yeah, and this seems like a really great way to take the emotion out of it and allow you to analyze the situation and really prioritize which pros and cons are important to you as well.
Right.
Well, and looking at the cons list makes me wonder, at what point do you stop trying to make a situation better? And a lot of times in our careers, we're in a tough spot and we want to do our best to improve the situation that we're in. So at what point do you stop trying?
Well, I think some questions you have to ask yourself at that point is, what do you have control of in making things better? You don't really have control over making a bad boss a good boss. I mean, if you do, that would be wonderful. Everybody would thank you. Um, or is it something that time can heal? Bad bosses sometimes are known for being human wrecking balls, and sometimes they get fired, and that can make your situation better. But I think you just have to make the determination, is this something that I have any control of making better? If it's your attitude, maybe you can make your attitude better, but other things you don't have control of.
And I imagine sometimes some of the things on the con list might be considered a toxic work environment. So what do you consider a toxic work environment?
I think there are lots of different versions of a toxic work environment. You'll know it when you feel it, and your family will recognize it. So it could be anything from sexual harassment, emotional harassment. It could be, one way to recognize it is everybody's whispering. There are a lot of little meetings behind closed doors where people are whispering and talking about what's going on. And, it just, in some ways it's healthy, in some ways it's unhealthy. But, I think there are just lots of different versions of it.
Well, getting on this all down on paper helps to get some perspective on the situation, and then this sets you up to ask some of these important questions.
So this is really process step 2, the 6 questions. I think the first one is, can I learn more? Learning can take a lot of different forms. You can learn new systems, you can learn new processes, you can help develop new processes, and you can ask for additional responsibilities in your job. If you're just kind of burned out and doing the same thing over and over, you can ask for more things to help you build your expertise. It's easier to volunteer for a project that would help you pivot to a new area with people you know, rather than trying to make a major pivot to a new job. If you can take a little time and get some of that experience before you go, all the better, and it will make it easier for you. Taking initiative can lead to great new things, and I think everyone values initiative. If they don't value initiative, I think that's a different thing that you should look at. Doing the same thing with no opportunity to grow can cause stagnation and frustration. And I think for a lot of people, that's when they start getting the itch to start looking.
Absolutely. And I'm sure a lot of us would want to leave a position if there are no opportunities for growth. I know that's happened to me. So those are some great suggestions that we can ask ourselves to turn around the current situation. What's the next question we should ask?
Can you earn more? And I think, there's a lot of emotions around this. I don't think there's anybody who doesn't want to earn more, and I don't know anyone who wants to earn less.
Right.
At least I haven't met them. Ann's 2019-2020 salary increase survey shows an average salary increase of 3.1%. It's been in the 2.8 to 2.9 range for the past 5 years. And, if you multiply anything times 3%, you're not going to get much of a bigger number. Our inflation rate is at 2.5%. That's for the 12 months ending in January of this year. So that increase really, doesn't do a whole lot for you. Willis Towers Watson did a survey that says that top performers will average 4.6%, which is certainly better than 3%, but not a lot. Do you have a chance for a promotion or a new role, a raise or a bonus? Because if you don't, it's going to catch up with you.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit dated from Forbes in 2014, but I think the key line is staying employed at the same company for over 2 years on average is going to make you earn less over your lifetime by 50% or more. Now, frankly, I think every 2 years you might be able to get away with, but in 10 years, I mean, you're going to have a pile of business cards on your hands.
I worry that every 2 years might leave an impression that you're just constantly job hopping, which could decrease your potential with other companies in the future.
Right. Every 2 years you might do it like early on, like maybe a couple times, but you can't do it forever because people notice that. So I put together a little tiny spreadsheet and looked at something of, starting at 50K, had to start somewhere, looking at 3% increases, changing jobs, another round of 3% increases, changing jobs, and came up with a 24% difference in 10 years.
That's really good perspective to have. That can make a huge difference in your long-term earning potential.
Right. So if you started at 50K, what would you want to make? 81 or 65?
81.
I don't think we need to do a poll on that.
Right.
It can really make a difference over time. So
all right, so even if you're happy at your job, evaluating your tenure can be really important. But besides tenure, the tenure considerations, how can we evaluate what we're worth?
Okay. I just happen to have a slide on
Look at
that. Thank you very much. So, doing salary research for market price, you can do that in a lot of different places. I think a pretty simple way is in LinkedIn Jobs. They have salary information. You put in your title, what city. You can drop down to level of experience to get it, a little bit better.
Okay.
So that's good. I mean, there are just a lot. Salary.com, I used to use that, but it got a little complicated on how to do it. But so, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, those are pretty easy ways to do it. And then looking at your value, from these components, academic, if you have an MBA, if you just got, a new certification, anything like that, what your professional experience is, and then what accomplishments you've made in your job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think knowing that information can help you in a number of different ways. It helps you put together a really good resume, thinking about what are those accomplishments and not having to just come up with them in an interview, but coming up with measurable results on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile. It will help you in a performance review to justify a higher raise. So you have to know your story. And if you underestimate your value, you can be assured that other people probably will too. Yeah. And a mentor might help you estimate your value, mm-hmm. But at work, why give you a higher raise if I don't have to? Right. But having a positive mindset, really coming at it and defining it in a professional way, not being angry about it, I've done all this, why don't you pay me more? But, coming at it from a very positive mindset, I think will help.
So we've talked about assessing the ability to learn more and the ability to earn more. What's the third question?
The third question is there a personal benefit to you staying longer in the role? And there are a lot of things that can help you make that decision. If you're finishing your degree and, you know what you're doing at your job, you can handle it with going to school, then it might make sense, till you're done. If you're going to move, if you have, new family members coming on board or changes in relationships, I think those kinds of things can help you make a decision about, maybe I want to leave, but maybe I don't want to leave right now. Is there a promotion, potential for a promotion or a new role? If a decision is going to be made in a few months, then, maybe you wait for that. Or a bonus that only comes in June, and this is February. So if a company is paying for part of your education, if there happens to be a clawback piece in them paying, that if you get your master's and they paid for it, or a portion of it, that you have to stay for a certain amount of time. But I think too that there's something underlying in that. If you hate every job you've ever had, I think you need to take time to figure out if you were part of the problem. And it's important not to make the same mistake again. I think sometimes people are like, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here right now. And so they operate in haste and get into another bad situation. So maybe it's just a whole lineup of bad situations that they're getting into, but I think you really have to spend some time to see what that's all about.
It sounds like going back to the pros and cons list and essentially doing a cost benefit analysis would be a helpful way to evaluate this third question.
Right. So right now we're going to do a little poll on have you ever stayed too long in a job, or have you ever regretted not staying longer? So we're anxious to see what you think. Interesting. Staying too long is winning.
By far winning.
We have clear poll results in front of us. Thank you. Okay, next, how's my timing? That's a little bit about, is there a benefit in staying longer? But, some of the other timing things to consider are, if you haven't been there very long, if you've only been there less than a year or two, again, depending on your work history, maybe you need to stick it out a little bit longer. There are no hard and fast rules about this, but going back to that changing jobs every 2 years, I've seen lots of resumes with people changing job every year, and it just doesn't look good. Mm-hmm. So do your research on the front end, and you can't, it's never 100%, but take your time in trying to pick things out. Can you financially afford to quit right now? I mean, that obviously is a very important question. Back to the burning bridges, are you leaving during your department's busiest time of the year? Because that will definitely be a bridge burner there. Or leaving when your team's in a rough spot, team members on leave, or right before you're to train a new team member. So I think you have to be conscious of those things.
Right. So it sounds like the timing is really impacted by the ways that you answered the first three
right.
questions. So let's say I've determined that there's not the learning and earning potential I'd like. I don't see benefits of staying longer, and the timing seems okay to make a change. What question should I ask next?
Okay. I think the next question is, the due diligence side of things. What companies and jobs do I want to target? And there's never been a better time than being able to do research on things than there is right now. You can conduct a simple search on Indeed or in LinkedIn on target jobs and target companies. I think you have to have a starting point on, and you can pick some different ones, but the first starting point might be, I want to stay in Denver. Mm-hmm. It might be, I've been commuting forever to this job and I really want to get something that's closer to where I live. Then it might be, who are the companies in that area, or what jobs are in that area, and just kind of drilling down. And looking at job descriptions, and when you're looking at job descriptions, I don't think it even has to be in the Denver metro area. Sometimes when I'm looking for job descriptions, I'll leave the search wide open because I'm really looking for what's in the job descriptions for the title, and I'm looking for keywords, I'm looking for requirements, and seeing trends. You know, if everybody's asking for, if I'm looking for something in finance and everybody's looking for someone who has advanced Excel and SQL, you know, that tells you if you don't have that, you know, there are lots of ways to get that.
Well, and that also might help you improve your resume as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, so if you're seeing gaps between what you know and what you need to know, you know, you can figure all that out. LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, there are just tons of ways to do that. And then when you're thinking about companies, researching them and, you know, looking at Glassdoor, looking at their press releases, and very importantly, talking to people. Because people, I mean, I've heard lots of scoop on lots of different companies, you know, in Denver. And, you know, if people would just ask, I think you can avoid getting into some bad places because a lot of people know bad places. You can't always figure out. You can, you know, do all your due diligence, go into a company, have an amazing boss, and then a month later the boss leaves. So you better be sure you want to be there and that you're not just going for an individual, one person. You know, and when you interview, you know, being really objective, looking around at the environment. Do people look happy? You know, what is the work environment? Is it very stiff and formal? Is that a kind of place that you could be in? But I think we get so emotionally connected on interviews that we just want them to like us, and we don't think enough about, do we like them?
Right. We're interviewing for the job as opposed to also us interviewing if the company is a right fit for us as well.
Right. And I really think, you know, it's how you come off. It's your attitude. You can't go in, you know, thinking, you know, what are you going to do for me? Because that's not going to play well. You know, everybody has to fall in love first.
Right.
You know, and then you can make the determination if you want to stay. But you have to make them like you first.
Right. Can you talk about some differences in your approach if you are considering agencies or nonprofits or consulting, but you've never had experience with those types of companies before?
Well, it definitely makes it harder. You know, making a big pivot, if you're a corporate person and you want to work in a nonprofit, I have lots of friends who thought that that was what they would do, you know, at the end of their careers, and that nonprofits were going to be so lucky to have them. And you know what? The nonprofits didn't feel that way. So, you know, networking, seeing what the requirements are for the different positions, like in a nonprofit, or what's different if you're going to go to an agency versus working in corporate, and how your skills and experience can be leveraged into those different organizations. You know, a lot of people say, you know, they want to go into consulting. And consulting's hard. It's really hard to get into. You know, if you want to do consulting on your own, then you have to think about, do you have enough of a base of people that would hire you? You know, consulting, if you do that kind of consulting, you know, you're consulting and you're looking for new business. And I think that's where it's hard for a lot of people in trying to balance those two things.
Right. Essentially, almost two businesses, trying to get business for the business as well as delivering a product or service.
But again, networking is a great way to go, because people like to talk, and people will tell you, if you ask them, what's your experience been, you know, in an agency. I saw that you were in corporate before, you know, how'd you make the transition? People are very willing. You know, they're less willing when you say, I want a job at your agency. You know, start small, be smooth.
Yeah.
And the last question is, what's your job search strategy? You know, you made some decisions, you've gathered your data, how are you going to go about it? And, this is really the piece that, you know, um, is your safety net, in that you've thought this through, you've looked at these things, and now you can make a plan.
So it's usually most ideal to look for a new job when you have a job. What are your recommendations when your current work environment is making that challenge?
Well, it can definitely be challenging to do to slip away for interviews. So, I think most companies are understanding that you're currently working, and you can certainly, tell them that. I'm so excited that I get an interview, but I'm still working. I really don't want my employer to know. Can we schedule this either early morning, lunchtime, or late in the day? Taking vacation days. It's rough sometimes if you come into work all suited up in a casual work environment, and people go, interviewing. So it is a challenge, but it's a challenge. I mean, don't let that detour you. You can figure something out.
But definitely maybe something part of that preparation process is banking some PTO hours so that you can be available for some of those interviews.
Yeah, but I mean, it's hard, and when you're taking off versus when they can interview, and that sort of thing. But millions of people do it every year, so you can, where there's a will, there's a way. So my motto is, don't stay too long and don't leave too soon.
Definitely good advice. All right, thank you so much, Sue. So now we're going to take some questions. Again, we will get to as many as we can with the rest of our time. So the first question we have here says, I don't want to quit, but I think my boss wants me to quit. We don't get along well, but I like my job besides the boss. Is it worth waiting to see if they leave first?
It's possible. I think you have to understand how long they've been at the company, how long they've been in that role, and if there are any indications of them leaving. So it's really kind of reading the tea leaves about what you think. And, and if they've been at the company for, let's say 3 years, and they've only been in this role 6 months, then they're probably not going to be leaving anytime soon. So I think you have to judge it that way.
Well, it sounds like that could be a little bit of a hostile environment if this individual thinks that their boss wants them to quit.
I think you can also, have a meeting, ask for a meeting, not necessarily go right to the heart of the matter, but, say, I would love to understand, 3 things that you think I do really well, and 3 areas that I can improve in, or flipping that around, and try and get to, if you think that boss wants you to quit, why is that? Is it something that you can have control of? But if there's no communication and it's bad, then also depending on how long you've been there,
right, could be an opportunity to improve the situation potentially as well. Okay, next question. I love my company, but I don't like my job. It isn't what I thought it would be. I'm not getting anywhere looking for other positions within the company. How should I approach this with my supervisor?
Again, it comes down to how long have you been doing it. It could get better. But maybe if there's some things that you would really like to do that you thought you were going to be doing, you can't do this like immediately. That's, it's too soon. But asking that initiative thing of asking if you can do, some additional work or a project or something like that, so that you can get out of it what you want to get out of it.
Volunteering for new opportunities, or maybe identifying teams that may need help on certain projects and raising your hand. Yeah. Okay, next question is, can you share some tips for resigning the right way? Who should I go to first? Do I tell my boss, especially if they have no idea, or how do I tell my boss, especially if they have no idea this was coming?
Well, I think that if you have an offer, a signed offer, and they've done background checks and all that sort of thing, and you know it's like a real deal, and you establish a start date, so you're covered. I think then um, go in, you give 2 weeks notice or whatever is appropriate in where you're at, and be very positive. It comes back to that don't burn bridges of, I've really enjoyed my time here. It's great. But I have found another opportunity that I think will be very beneficial for my career. And, I'd like to give you 2 weeks notice, but always the smooch first.
Right. And you go to your direct supervisor
Right.
for this? Okay. Next question. If I've been approached by a recruiter questioning that I submit my application for a position, is it reasonable for me to inquire about the salary range for the position of the company before I start launching into the interview process?
Absolutely. And recruiters often are loath to tell you that amount, because if you say 75 to 100, they want 75 and you want 100. And so that's why they don't like to say. But I think, coming across to saying, is so exciting. Luckily, I mean, if they tell you the company, because a lot of times they don't want to do that either, to understand if I want to move forward with this, I really need, to know like the position, the company, and what target compensation range is. Those are all very reasonable things to ask.
Right, and will help you evaluate if it's worth the time to continue with the process.
Right, because the recruiter should want to know, and that's why they ask the question about the compensation question, which, people are not going to be able to ask going forward, because they want to know if it's a good use of their time to work with you. Because if if their position pays 100 and you currently make 120, then, it's really not worth either of your time, to do it. Unless there's just it's an amazing company, there's something very special about it.
So it's in everyone's best interest to go ahead and ask those types of questions.
Right. And I think they're very reasonable questions. I mean, how else can you decide if you want to move forward or not?
Right.
Really.
Right. Next question. In this economy, is it worth quitting my job to go back to school, or are my prospects better to stay and grow with a company?
It depends on what your job is. And it depends on if you think you can, move through a promotion process ultimately with the knowledge, experience, and education that you have right now. I mean, if a company, if you're seeing position descriptions out there and they're all requesting an MBA or an MS in finance or something like that, and you don't have one, but you aspire to one of those positions, then it probably makes sense to go back to school. But I don't think you necessarily have to quit your job to go back to school. Our professional graduate programs, I would say almost everybody works.
Right.
So I don't think it has to be an either or.
Yeah, that's what I did actually for 4 years when I got my MBA and my master's in marketing. I was working full-time as well as going to school at UCD.
Yep, I worked full-time during my graduate program. So I think that's pretty typical.
All right. Next question. I've been in the same position for the past 26 years, mostly because I've been able to work 30-hour weeks with full benefits for the past 18 years. In my mind, that seems impossible to find anywhere else. How do you go about looking for that type of a part-time job?
You win for hardest question. I don't know if you can, really. If you've been in the same position in the same company for that amount of time, I mean, in a certain way, you've kind of cast your fate on being there. It's hard to find a part-time position, you know, because almost everybody has positions that are full-time.
Right.
It's almost easier if you work in someplace full-time, you know, and they really like you a lot to negotiate down than it is to find one. So I don't have a good answer. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I've been at a company for 10 years and I'm not enjoying my job and feel that maybe I need a career change, but I'm afraid of starting over at my age. I'm 40. How might you recommend I seek guidance on what would be a smart decision on my next move?
Okay, first of all, 40 is not old.
No, not at all.
40 is not old. And I think, you know, if you stay another 5 years, then you've been there 15 years, and it's only going to get harder to make the switch as you go forward. So I think, you know, doing some of that and a career change, you know, if it's just changing companies, that's one thing for a similar kind of job. But if you're going to make a hard pivot to something else, then I think you have to, again, look at those job descriptions, see where the gaps are, see if certifications or coming back for a graduate degree makes sense. You know, it's such a individual case thing, but hey, if you're an alum of the business school, my department helps alum answer those tough questions. So email bcc@ucdenver.edu and we'd be happy to talk to you.
Perfect. Next question. I love my job. I've been here for 19 years and I love the clients I'm assigned to serve. What worries me is we have new executives who have bright ideas on how to change things, but they usually don't understand our company. These bright ideas cost a lot and are usually detrimental to how we do business. As a result, our benefits have decreased. Should I look for something better since I have no control over this?
Second hardest question.
Yeah. I've been in a position before where benefits decreased over time and there really wasn't anything that I could do about it, and I eventually moved on.
I would say start looking. You know, I mean, looking does not mean changing. Looking means looking and seeing what else is out there, and you know, and then making a choice of if you're going to go for it or not.
Yeah.
You know,
and seeing what's out there, just looking, also could help you get a better understanding of what you're worth.
Right. You know, because you could be in a great spot. I mean, not everybody has to change jobs all the time, but you have to look out for what's best for you, because you will be the only person looking out for what's best for you in your career.
And looking can't hurt anything.
Right.
What is the right way to go about resigning if you don't have another job lined up? How much should you share about what you're going to do next?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
You know, you really don't have to share, even if you know where you're going next. Like if you were going to a competitor, you were in sales and going to a competitor, sometimes you give 2 weeks notice and they walk you out, right? Because of competitive issues. But I think you just, you know, give your resignation letter and have the conversation and say, you know, I've decided to, you know, move on to other opportunities. And if they say, where are you going? I think, you know, you can say, you know, thanks for asking, but I'd really rather not share that right now.
Did you say personal reasons, or do you think that would reflect badly potentially?
No, I think that would be okay. You know, it depends on your boss and what you think will kind of resonate with that individual.
All right, next question. I work for a large company that has a lot of internal jobs I can apply for. Part of that process, though, is telling my supervisor that I'm applying and looking. How would I approach this? Is it similar to the answer you gave to the question about resigning?
Again, very individual case on how long you've been in that role, the role that you're in right now. And, I think being able to go to your boss and say, I've been in this role for 5 years. I've really enjoyed it. It's been great, but I would like to look at other opportunities in the company. This is no reflection on you or our department, but I think I need to just change it up a little bit. That ought to work.
And that could tie back to the first question today, can I learn more? If you're looking for new opportunities within the company, letting your boss know that you'd like some more challenges, you're looking for different ways to contribute, it could find different things in your current role as well as opening the door to look at other positions within the company.
Right. I mean, I think everybody should really use their performance evaluation times each year to talk about goals and initiative and maybe doing some new things and talking about all the great things that you've done to help guide for a raise or a bonus or a promotion.
All right, the next question is about timing. I know that timing is important, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. Do you have any tips for leaving a position in the busy season or in the middle of a big project? I don't want to burn any bridges or lose a good reference.
I think then when you resign, then you have to kind of add an apology with it, saying, I've loved being here. It's been a great experience. I know this is our busiest time, but unfortunately, I've found another opportunity that, I'm really excited about. And but I'm happy to stay for the next 2 weeks or whatever you've negotiated with the new employer. Right? Because you can negotiate a longer period of time. To stay.
If the new company is amenable to that, then you're giving the current company a little more notice during that busy season. So hopefully that would help.
Right.
The transition.
I mean, I've given in my own career 30-day notices. In my last job before I started my search firm, I told them it was exactly that. We were in a really big project that I'd sold, and there was a lot going on. And I said, I just want you to know, that at the end of the project, I am leaving. I was starting my own company, so it wasn't like I was going someplace else. But, some companies are flexible that they'll let you do a month. Some are like, I want you really fast, and you should always be able to negotiate 2 weeks. But, I would just put that acknowledgement in there that this is tough, and maybe that you asked that company for a month and they couldn't do it, they could only two weeks, and then I think you're fine. I mean, if you just go in and say, I quit, bummer for you, bye, bridge, burned, blown up first.
All right. Next question. I'm not getting promoted even if I have increased responsibility. I've been there for almost 4 years. I earn very well in my state and the industry is slowing down. Also, I'm still getting valuable skills. Should I start searching for a new job?
So the industry that you're in is slowing down?
That's what it sounds like.
I mean, if you're getting valuable skills, depends on what compensation is.
This sounds like it might be a good opportunity to go back to that pros and cons list because there's a lot of variables weighing in here, and then maybe prioritizing some of those. And potentially, once again, this could be an opportunity. You might as well look and see what's out there if something catches your eye.
Being there 4 years, you're in good shape on tenure, how long you've been there and everything. But Look at those other positions, because if you're doing something, you're getting increased responsibility, then it may be like if you're a financial analyst, I keep going to finance today, a financial analyst, you may qualify for a senior financial analyst someplace else. And like I said before, looking doesn't hurt. You don't have to do it, but at least you know where you're at. If you're, wow, I am paid more than most financial analysts, then you might be in good shape.
Thank you. The next question here is about reorganization. So if your company has a reorg and you've made it through the reorg, how do you assess that situation? Should you start looking after that reorg, or maybe things would be okay?
Well, I think you have to, look at how your company's doing. And sometimes if they do a big reorg, they may say, we're downsizing by 300 employees and we think there might be another round in June. In that case, start looking.
Absolutely.
But if it's, I've survived reorgs before, and it was just purely a reorg. It wasn't, a bellwether of what was going to happen next. So I think you have to look at the whole thing.
All right, thank you so much, Sue. And thank you to everyone that joined us today. Just as a reminder, we will be providing a recording of this webinar along with the resources that we have shared. So take a look out for that in your inbox. If you've not checked out our new alumni website, you can do so at business.ucdenver.edu/alumni. There you'll find information on all upcoming alumni events, as well as how to get involved, and there could be some great networking opportunities there as well, tied back to what we discussed today. So thank you again, Sue. Thank you for everyone for attending.